قد أفلح المؤمنون.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل Muhammad. When we last left off, we were going over some of the prophecies related to Imam al-Husayn's martyrdom in Karbala. We went over the prophecies from the previous prophets such as Nabi Ibrahim and Nabi Yahya and Zakaria, as well as Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We went over the reports of Sayyida al-Muminoon Salama salamullahi alayha. We went over the reports of Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullahi alayhi. And we are going over these reports as a reminder of the fact that al-Husayn alayhi salam knows what's about to happen, that this was something that was prophesized, that is a proof of Rasulullah's nubuwah. This is something I wish to highlight before we move on, is that the Mukhalifeen have this disgusting habit of trying to downplay the history of the Ahlul Bayt. They say, oh, why do you go over Jamal? Why do you focus so much on Jamal and Siffin and Karbala? And the reason why we do, one of the reasons why, is because these events are a proof for Islam. When Rasulullah prophesizes that his grandson Hussein will be killed in Karbala, this is a prophecy. When his prophecy comes true, that is a proof for his nubuwah. And it is for this reason that even the Mukhalifeen, their scholars such as al-Bayhaqi, have these reports in their books such as Dala'il al-Nubuwah. But in any case, now we are going to move on. Now we're going to return back to the narrative of the Maqtal of Aba Abdullah salamullahi alayhi. And as we know, when we last left off, he was being essentially you'd say, shadowed by al-Hurr ibn Yazid al-Riyahi, who was not allowing him to go to Kufa, he was not allowing him to leave, and eventually he received orders to box Hussein in to prevent him from going to anywhere where there is water or any sort of fortification. And so he stopped at the land of Al-Aqr, which is also called Karbala. And so that is where we will pick that is where we will be picking up. And so as we pick up the narrative, what happens next chronologically is that Umar ibn Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas arrives with reinforcements. He arrives with a large contingent of soldiers from Kufa. And later more men begin to show up until eventually Imam al-Husayn is severely outnumbered. And we know that Zuhair ibn al-Qayn had warned the Imam. He had told him that if we fight them now, we have a chance. If we fight al-Hurr and his men, we may be able to beat them. But if we wait for the entire host to assemble, we are going to find ourselves in a very difficult situation. And so, picking up, what I wish to do now is I wish to go over who was Umar ibn Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas. And the reason why I want to do this is because Umar ibn Sa'ad, as we know, he's one of the great villains of the story of Karbala, alongside Yazid and Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad and Shimr ibn al-Jawshan, among others. But the thing about Umar ibn Sa'ad is there's a very important lesson to learn from this man. Even though he is an evil man, he is a man condemned to hell, there's something very important to learn here. And that is the dangers of loving dunya and loving leadership. Because Umar ibn Sa'ad, when we look at his lineage, he is Umar ibn Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas al-Zuhri. And so he is related to Bani Hashim. They have a tie of kinship. And that is because the Prophet's mother, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, his mother, Sayyida Amina bint Wahab, is from Bani Zuhra. And so it is for this reason that we see that Umar ibn Sa'ad has a relationship with Bani Hashim. And that is why Muslim ibn Aqil instructed him to write a letter to the Imam to carry out his will, and he did so. Correct? But what we are going to see is we are going to see that this man knows the difference between right and wrong. He knows perfectly well what he's doing is wrong, but he does it anyway out of love for the dunya and out of love for imara, for leadership, for wanting to be a ruler, essentially, and also because of the fact that he feared Allah's creation more than he feared Allah himself. But with that being said, let us dive into it. Ibn Asakir has some reports in his Kitab Tarikh Dimashq about Umar ibn Sa'ad before the Battle of Karbala, and I wish to go over a few of them. And this can be found in Tarikh Dimashq, page 47 to 48. So he reports on page 47 with his chain that Umar ibn Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas had once attacked one of his father Sa'ad's servants, who is dearly beloved to Sa'ad, almost like a son. So Umar had whipped him with 100 times, And so this young boy came to Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas with blood streaming from his eyes. So Sa'ad asked the boy what happened to him. And so the boy informed him that your son Umar did this to me. So Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas said, "Oh Allah, kill Umar and let his blood flow onto his eyes." And so that boy died because as a result of his injuries, and then later al-Mukhtar killed Umar ibn Sa'ad. So we see from a young age that Umar ibn Sa'ad is not someone who, we would say, has any qualms about shedding innocent blood. He further reports that once Umar ibn Sa'ad said to Imam al-Husayn salamullahi alayh, a group of foolish people claim that I will kill you. So al-Husayn replied, they are not foolish, but rather forbearing individuals. Then he said, by Allah, it is certain that you will not enjoy the goodness of Iraq after me, except to a limited extent. So a quick comment here, we say, how did people know this? How did people know this? Well, we know that Kufa was filled with disciples of Amir al-Muminoon, salamullahi alayhi. So, moving on, we see that he narrates another report. He reports from Abdullah ibn Shurayk. He says, I encountered the companions of al-Ardiyya al-Mu'allama and the companions of the Baranis from the companions of the tents. Whenever Umar ibn Sa'ad passed by them, they would say, this is the one who will kill Husayn, and that was before he killed him. And lastly, most important of all, is the words of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali salamullahi alayhi, who is reported to have said to Umar ibn Sa'ad, how will you be when you stand in a place where you have the choice between paradise and fire, and you choose the fire? So Imam Ali is warning Umar ibn Sa'ad. He says, there will come a time where you will be given the choice between heaven and hell, and you will choose hellfire. So moving on, we will now see how correct Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullahi alayhi was. Correct? We'll see that Amir al-Mu'mineen knew exactly what he was talking about, and how what he said would come to pass. Al-Tabari reports, and this can be read in Tarikh al-Tabari, volume 19, page 103 to 105. He says the following, and this is a summary. During the time of Imam al-Husayn's affair, Umar ibn Sa'ad had been appointed by Ibn Ziyad to lead an army to Dastaba, as the local Daylamites had rebelled. Now I want to clarify here, for those of you who may not know the geography of the Islamic world, Dastaba and the Daylamites, this is an area in Iran, and the Daylamites are a ethnic group within Iran that had not yet become Muslim, and they were fierce enemies of the Muslims. So the Muslim rulers would always send out these commanders on campaigns to crush them and to keep them in check. So Ibn Ziyad had written a writ making him the governor of Ray. But when Ibn Ziyad heard of al-Husayn's coming to Kufa, he recalled Umar and ordered him to march to fight al-Husayn salamullahi alayhi. Umar begged to be relieved, but Ibn Ziyad made it clear that unless he agreed to carry out this deed, his governorship of Ray would be revoked. So Umar had been given an army, he had been given a contract that said a document that said, you are the governor of Ray, you will lead this army to fight these Daylamites. And then Ibn Ziyad said, hang on, come back, I changed my mind, go fight Husayn. So Umar ibn Sa'ad is like, pick someone else, I don't want to do that, I don't want to fight al-Husayn ibn Ali. He said, no, you either fight Husayn or give us back our writ, give us back the governorship that we gave you. And there are other reports that indicate that Ibn Ziyad told him, and I believe this is in al-Akhbar al-Tiwal by Dainawari, that Ibn Ziyad told him, he says, you either give me back you either carry out my order, or you give me back my contract, you give me back the writ of appointment, and then I will destroy your house, and I will behead you. And so Umar ibn Sa'ad replies to Ibn Ziyad, he says, give me a night to consider my decision. And so he went and he asked for advice. So he had, his nephew, as well as a person by the name of Yassar al-Juhani. So his nephew was Hamza ibn al-Mughira ibn Shu'bah, the son of the infamous Sahabi, and Yassar al-Juhani. So they advised him, don't do this. This is not a good idea. Do not fight al-Husayn. It's not worth it. But his love of worldly authority and the trappings of this world overpowered him. And the next day, he went to Ibn Ziyad and confirmed that he would do as he commanded. He then set out with 4,000 men directed towards Karbala to fight al-Husayn salamullahi alayhi. He first sent a messenger to al-Husayn, and again I'm summarizing these events. He sent a messenger to al-Husayn to inquire about the purpose of his coming to Iraq. Al-Husayn answered again that he was responding to the invitation of the people of Kufa, but was ready to leave if they now disliked his presence. When Umar ibn Sa'ad reported back to Ubaydullah, Umar ibn Sa'ad is trying to avoid, this conflict. He writes a letter back to Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, and he tells him, Al-Husayn is he's claiming that he only came here because of the letters. If you want, we can let him go. So Ibn Ziyad wrote him a letter back. He said, offer al-Husayn and his supporters the opportunity to swear allegiance to Yazid. If they do so, we will judge the matter further. Shortly afterwards, he ordered Umar ibn Sa'ad to cut Husayn and his followers off from access to Nahr al-Furat. And Ibn Ziyad, la'inahullah, his reasoning for this, he says, we will treat them the way they treated Uthman. Cut off the water to them the way they cut off water to Uthman. And so Umar stationed 500 men across the Nahr al-Furat, but he was unable to prevent al-Husayn's brother, al-Abbas ibn Ali, salamullahi alayh, with 50 men from al-Husayn's camp from filling their water skins in a night sortie. And so this story, the story of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas's attack on the river on the 7th of Muharram, or the night of the 7th of Muharram, we covered that in detail in his biography, as well as in the biography of his right-hand man during this mission, Nafi' ibn Hilal, radiyallahu ta'ala alayh. Al-Tabari further reports in volume 19, page 108 to 109, that while the formal standoff continued, the two armies are facing each other. It's a waiting game. Al-Husayn is running out of water. His brother went and managed to bring them some water. We see that Al-Husayn salamullahi alayhi sent a messenger to Umar ibn Sa'ad, suggesting that they meet privately at night between the camps. They met and are said to have talked for much of the night, and no one was able to hear their conversation. But there were rumors that Al-Husayn proposed they both leave their armies and go together to see Yazid. Umar ibn Sa'ad, however, refused to do so, afraid of having his home destroyed and his property confiscated by Ubaydullah, and thus the meeting was inconclusive. And so, again, I am summarizing this report because we don't want to focus too much on these people. We want to mainly keep the focus on Abu Abdullah, salamullahi alayhi. But I want to highlight something here. There is a corroborating report from al-Daynawari where, Imam al-Husayn, when he's talking to Umar ibn Sa'ad, you can see the fact that Ibn Sa'ad has no valid excuse. So al-Husayn tells him, he says, why are you doing this? And he's like, I want to rule over Ar-Ray. So al-Husayn tells him, I have land in Medina and I can give it to you. It'll be better for you than Ar-Ray. And he says, but he's going to destroy my house. So Imam al-Husayn tells him, what Allah has is better for you than what Ibn Ziyad has. So Umar ibn Sa'ad can clearly see, and he knows very well that what he's doing is not only haram, but it is dishonorable. As in anyone else, it would simply be haram. But for him, he has a tie of kinship with Abu Abdullah, salamullahi alayhi. But that love of dunya was simply too much for him, and his pathetic excuses will not avail him with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So now I wish to go over a shubha that many of the mukhalifeen now have begun bringing up. Al-Tabari reports that, or it's not necessarily Al-Tabari, but it has been reported that Al-Imam al-Husayn salamullahi alayh offered Umar ibn Sa'ad one of three choices. Either let me go back to Hijaz, or take me to Syria to give bay'ah to Yazid, or send me to one of the border stations, to one of the thuhur, to fight the infidels. So this is very, very munkar for a number of reasons. Number one is we know that Al-Imam al-Husayn salamullahi alayhi, the whole reason for him coming to Iraq is because he knows they're going to kill him if he doesn't give bay'ah to Yazid. If it was simply a matter of giving bay'ah to Yazid, he could have done that in Hijaz. Number two, the mukhalifeen they've put themselves in a horrible position that no one can envy them for. And that is their horrible misunderstanding of imamah. In their belief, and whoever wants can go back to the books of Taftazani and can go back to the books that reference the ara of Ahmad ibn Hanbal, the Ahl Sunnah have a virtual ijma' that Yazid was the rightful Khalifa. By their aqa'id, Yazid is the rightful Khalifa. So in this situation, Al-Husayn, who has left the Jama'ah, refused to give bay'ah to Yazid and come to Kufa, what is he considered? He's considered a baghi, wal-'ayadhu billah. By their aqidah. By our aqidah, al-Husayn is the imam, and Yazid and all of his supporters, they are the bughat. Undoubtedly. Correct? However, you can't have the grandson of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, who they claim to love and who is a sahabi, being a baghi. So what do you have to do? You have to fabricate that somewhere along the line al-Husayn became a coward and he said, oh yeah, take me to Yazid, I'll give bay'ah to Yazid. Otherwise, what happens? Otherwise, the likes of Abdullah ibn Umar and all those people who argue that Yazid's bay'ah is legitimate, how do they look? They look terrible. So this is their horrible compromise, is that they need to make al-Husayn look like a coward, and they need to make him look like a man who's foolish. He came all the way to Iraq because he didn't want to give bay'ah to Yazid, and now that they've surrounded him, okay, I'll give bay'ah to Yazid. But in any case, so that is the way we refuse this metan. But when it comes to the isnad, al-Tabari reports on the authority of Uqba ibn Sam'an, Mawla al-Rabab, salamullahi alayha. He reports his words. He says, I accompanied al-Husayn, and this can be found in Tarikh al-Tabari, volume 19, page 109. He says, I accompanied al-Husayn the entire time. I left Medina for Mecca with him, and Mecca for Iraq. I did not leave him until he died. There was no one who addressed a word to him, either in Medina, in Mecca, on the road, in Iraq, or in the camp, until the day of his death, without my hearing the conversation. By Allah, and he's swearing by Allah, he neither gave the promise, which all the people claim to recall when they alleged that he would put his hand in the hand of Yazid ibn Muawiyah, or that they should send him to one of the Muslims' border stations. Rather, he said, leave me and I will travel this broad land so that we may see how the people's affair develops. And we say this is the more accurate narrative. This is and Shaykh Subt ibn Jawzi, in his Tadhkirat al-Khawas, he mentions this shubha as well, and he refutes it in the exact same way. He says, we reject this idea that al-Husayn said, take me to Yazid, I'll give him bay'ah, or send me to one of the thuhur, or let me go. He said, specifically citing the report of Uqba ibn Sam'an. Now then, to continue the narrative, we must go over another one of al-Imam al-Husayn's most infamous enemies, and that is, of course, Shimr ibn al-Jawshan, la'inahullah. And this is where things get interesting, I would say, because Umar ibn Sa'ad, most people know about him, most people have some idea of what he was doing in Karbala, why he was there, that he wanted hukm al-ray, he wanted to be a governor, he wanted power, correct? However, Shimr, when it comes to Shimr ibn al-Jawshan, most people don't know much about this man or his biography. But luckily for you, we have some reports to share. The first couple of reports I want to share is regarding his father, regarding his family history. This is Kitab al-Tabaqat al-Kubra by Ibn Sa'ad. In volume 6, page 194 to 195, he gives us a few reports about the father of Shimr, who is a man by the name of Dhil Jawshan. So Shimr's father, Dhil Jawshan, is a Sahabi. That means that Shimr is one of the great tabi'een. Our Mukhalifeen, they believe, the first generation is the best, and the second generation, and then the third generation. That's the Salaf, according to them. Correct? So Shimr ibn Dhil Jawshan is one of the Salaf, apparently. And interestingly enough, there are reports in the hadith books of the Mukhalifeen from Shimr ibn Dhil Jawshan. And they are extremely, extremely well hidden. So the first report, or rather, let's go over his family history before we go over these reports. According to Ibn Sa'ad, and I'm summarizing here what is on the scan. According to Ibn Sa'ad, the father of Shimr came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam following the Battle of Badr, and he offered to give Rasulullah his horse. So Rasulullah told him, I will not take your horse, but I will trade it to you for a piece of armor that we have captured during Badr. And so the Jawshan said, I'm not interested in having such a trade. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked the Jawshan, he said, what prevents you from accepting Islam? So the Jawshan gives this horrible reasoning for why he doesn't want to accept Islam. He says, Muhammad, I don't think it is a good idea, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa Muhammad, I don't think it is a good idea for me to accept Islam, because your own people haven't accepted Islam. You just fought your own people. If you manage to overcome your people, then I will accept Islam. And so Rasulullah told him, Inshallah, you will see how I overcome my people. And so A few years later, when Rasulullah conquered Mecca, a messenger came to the Joshan and told him Muhammad has defeated Quraysh, he has overcome Quraysh. Correct? So the Joshan, he converted to Islam, but he spent the rest of his life regretting that he had not converted to Islam before the Battle of Badr, because he could have been one of the early Muslims, but he had delayed his Islam for such an absurd reason. Correct? So that's the father of Shimr, and there are hadiths in the books of the Mukhalifin from the father of Shimr. In Kitab Sunan Abi Dawud, hadith 2786, and this is a very well hidden secret. So in Sunan Abi Dawud narrates with his chain to Abi Ishaq al-Subay'i and Abi Ishaq an Dhil Joshan. So this sanad does not make sense, because when it comes to this isnad, Abi Ishaq did not meet Dhil Joshan. So what's going on here? Why is this report mursal? So we see in the tahqiq of Sunan Abi Dawud by Shu'ayb al-Arnaout, we see here in his tahqiq, he mentions that a narrator's name was hidden, and that person is Shimr ibn Dhil Joshan. And he comments, يعني بذلك جهالة الشمر والله أعلم. So Sunan Abi Dawud has a report from Shimr ibn Dhil Joshan from his father, but they took out the name of Shimr, and Shu'ayb al-Arnaout, the great muhaqqiq, he concludes that this narrator is majhul. We don't even have enough we can't call him da'if. Killing Husayn is not enough to make a narrator da'if. He is only majhul. Subhanallah. As for Umar ibn Sa'ad, who we covered earlier, you can find his hadith in Sunan al-Nasa'i, as well as in Musnad Ahmad ibn Hanbal, where Shu'ayb al-Arnaout graded them as Hasan, because in the rijal of our opponents, Umar ibn Sa'ad is considered saduq. But in any case, Umar ibn Sa'ad, when it comes to Shimr ibn Joshan, there are a few reports about his early life before Karbala. So firstly, we see in Kitab Waq'at Siffin by Shaykhuna Nasr ibn Muzahim, rahimahullah, that Shimr, from page 267, 268, Shimr was in Imam Ali's army, and he fought during the Battle of Siffin. And during the Battle of Siffin, his face was mangled by one of Muawiyah's men. One of Muawiyah's men struck him on the face with a sword, and it severely deformed him. And so another report regarding Shimr is concerning his role during the Khilafah of Muawiyah. When Hujr ibn Adi, radwanullahi ta'ala alayh, when he stood up to Ziyad ibn Abi, Shimr is one of the people who falsely bared witness against him. And this is recorded in Tarikh al-Tabari in volume 18 regarding the Khilafah of Muawiyah, page 141 to page 143. So he falsely testified that Hujr had become an apostate, and he helped in essentially getting Hujr ibn Adi radwanullahi ta'ala alayh executed. Furthermore, as Zubayr ibn Bakar reported in Kitab al-Muwaffaqiyat, page 149, hadith number 88, he reports with his chain to Anas ibn Iyad, who said, I asked Ja'far ibn Muhammad sallallahu alayhi was asked, how delayed is the scene, i.e. the occurrence of a dream? So when someone sees a dream, how long can it take for that dream or what it's prophesizing or sort of indicating to come true? So Imam al-Sadiq sallallahu alayhi said, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam saw in a dream as though a spotted dog was licking his blood. Shimr ibn Joshan, the killer of Abu Abdullah al-Husayn, was that dog. He was cross-eyed, and the interpretation of the vision, or rather the fulfillment of this vision, came true after 60 years. So Imam al-Sadiq sallallahu alayhi is saying that when someone sees a dream, when someone sees something in their dream, it can take, with Rasulullah, it took 60 years for that to come true. Right? So we see from these reports, we get a very horrendous view of what Shimr looked like. His face was mangled from Siffin. He suffered from a skin condition that caused him to be covered with spots all over his flesh. And we see that he was also cross-eyed, according to the report of Imam al-Sadiq. Furthermore, according to Ibn Sa'ad and al-Dhahabi, they report that Shimr was apparently a very pious man, that he was a very holier-than-thou man, that you could often see him praying in the mosque. So Ibn Sa'ad reports in Kitab al-Tabaqat in volume 6, page 453, and the previous report that we cited from Ibn Sa'ad in the bio of his father also has this report, so Ibn Sa'ad repeated it. And this is also reported by al-Dhahabi in Kitab Mizan al-I'tidal in volume 3, page 385, bio number 3747. So they report with their isnads to Abi Ishaq al-Subay'i, who narrated that Shimr used to pray. He used to pray with us and say, "O Allah, you know that I am a righteous man, thus forgive me." The other report, the first report, Abu Ishaq says that, we used to pray, but he would not pray with us. He would come afterwards and pray alone. No one wanted to be around him. So Abu Ishaq narrates, he says, "I said to him, how can Allah forgive you when you participated in the killing of Rasulullah's grandson?" So look at Shimr's response. Look at this la'een and his mentality. He says, "Woe to you. What should I have done? Our rulers ordered us to do so. We therefore did not disobey them. If we disobeyed them, then we would be worse than these animals." So essentially, as Shimr is saying, if I did not kill Husayn salamullahi alayh, I would be worse than an animal. And to that we say, indeed, you are worse than an animal, and you are one of the most horrendous creatures that ever walked on Allah's earth. Now, the reason why we've gone over, now we know that a little more about Umar ibn Sa'ad, we know about Shimr, because these men arrived later with hundreds of men, thousands of men under their command. We will continue with the narrative. Whatever proposals Umar ibn Sa'ad submitted to Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, they were evidently designed to avoid fighting or for Imam al-Husayn to surrender to the governor of Kufa. Ibn Sa'ad is trying to play this game. Instead of siding with Aba Abdullah, instead of siding against Ibn Ziyad, he's simply trying to delay. He's trying to get what he wants without having to go through the shame of fighting the Prophet's grandson. Al-Tabari reports in his Tarikh in volume 19, page 110 to 112, and we are summarizing these events, that Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad is at first said to have been ready to accept terms. But Shimr ibn al-Jawshan, al-Mal'un, advised him. He said, "No, do not allow al-Husayn to escape from your territory without having submitted to your authority, since this will be a sign of weakness on your part and an acknowledgement of the power of Husayn's position. If al-Husayn and his followers submit, the governor can choose between punishing them or forgiving them." And we see that Ibn Ziyad almost was willing to let al-Husayn go. However, Shimr egged him on. He said, "No, destroy them. You have them at your mercy. Why would you let them go?" So Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, la'inahullah, now changed his mind and wrote to Umar ibn Sa'ad that he had not sent him to hold off from fighting al-Husayn and to intercede on his behalf. If al-Husayn and his followers submitted to his authority, Umar could send them to Kufa. However, he should fight, kill, and this last part, disfigure or mutilate them, as they deserve that. We see that Ibn Ziyad, in his order to Ibn Sa'ad, he told him explicitly, fight them, kill them, and then after you kill them, trample their bodies. This was an explicit order from Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad. If al-Husayn was killed, he should make the horses trample on his chest and his back, since he was a disobedient rebel, an evil wrongdoer who split the community, and since he, i.e. Ubaydullah, had made a vow to do that to Husayn in case he was killed. If Umar ibn Sa'ad refused to comply with these instructions, he should surrender the command to Shimr ibn al-Jawshan, with whom Ubaydullah had sent the letter. On reading this, Umar ibn Sa'ad cursed Shimr, but agreed to carry out the orders himself. And with that being said, this is where we will stop with this part. Inshallah, in the next part, we shall go over the events of the 9th of Muharram, as well as Imam al-Husayn's preparations for battle. We will catch you on the next one. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.